Judging the Surface Go 2 really comes down to your expectations. Can you live with the slow performance to get a well-designed $400 tablet PC, not including a keyboard? Or are you okay with spending hundreds more to get a slightly more capable machine that's as cute as a button? If you answered yes to either question, this might be the mini PC for you. If you answered no, stay far away, for this path leads to frustration. Now, I like the original Surface Go. It was well built and more usable as a tablet than any other Surface before, but there were definitely issues. It was just too slow to rely on as my main PC. And even though the $400 entry price seemed compelling, it started creeping up quickly once you added a $100 type cover and bumped up your RAM and storage. Once you start creeping past $500, it's not hard to find last-gen ultra-portables on sale that could be far more practical, like a 2 or 3 year old XPS 13. For the Surface Go 2, Microsoft increased the performance a bit with a Core M3 CPU option, dropped in a slightly larger 10.5-inch screen without making the device larger, and added a dose of connectivity with optional LTE. But fundamentally, it's not that much different than its predecessor. In fact, Microsoft didn't change anything about its design. It's still relatively slim and uses the same sturdy magnesium alloy finish we're used to on the Surface line. The iconic kickstand is there too, and it can once again open up to 165 degrees, which is a great angle for drawing and handwriting with the $115 Surface Pen. Since its dimensions haven't budged, the Surface Go 2 also relies on the same type cover from 2 years ago, and there's also the $130 Alcantara-clad cover. I can't imagine Microsoft would completely redesign the Surface Go after its debut, but it still would have been nice to see more of a push forward. The larger screen is certainly nice to have, but the overall experience on the $400 base model hasn't budged at all over the past 2 years. It's still equipped with a lowly Pentium Gold CPU, though it's at least based on a newer chip architecture than before. It still has a meager 4GB of RAM, and there's only 64GB of sluggish eMMC storage, which is not that much different than what you find on a flash drive. In comparison, Apple's $329 iPad is equipped with a Fusion A10 processor, a remnant from the iPhone 7 that's still pretty zippy today, and 32GB of storage. I get it, trying to spec out a $400 tablet is tough, but Microsoft could have made the base Surface Go 2 a bit more compelling by bundling together an accessory or two. Maybe throw in a type cover, because nobody's going to buy this thing, or any Surface for that matter, without a keyboard. And if you've read any of my previous Surface reviews, you'll know this is a hill I'm prepared to die on. Our review model, conveniently enough, was the highest-end $730 Surface Go 2, which had a Core M3 CPU, 8GB of RAM, and a 128GB SSD. It also had built-in LTE, but I wasn't able to test that out in time for this review, and it's not like I'm going anywhere anytime soon. As soon as I started browsing the web and building up my usual pile of tabs, I could immediately feel the speed difference from the original Go. That's why I'm particularly annoyed the base model hasn't improved much. I know how limiting a Pentium Gold CPU can be. The type cover remains a fantastic little keyboard, even if it's a bit cramped. It'll take a bit of getting used to, but after working on the Go 2 for an hour, my fingers quickly adapted. There's a decent amount of key travel, like all of the Surface covers, and it attaches to the tablet easily with magnets. The Surface kickstand hasn't changed a bit either. It's functional, but I would still love a solution to the way it digs into my bare legs when it's on my lap. Despite the additional power, it didn't take long for me to feel the upper limits of our Surface Go 2. CPU usage never dipped below 50% with a few dozen browser tabs, Evernote, Spotify, and Slack open. I reached 75% memory capacity even sooner, and it only crept up higher the more I used it. Now, realistically, I would probably be a bit more cautious about opening up too many tabs on such a lightweight PC, but I wanted to see how the Surface Go 2 would handle my usual workflow, and for the most part I was impressed by how well the Core M3 CPU held up. But I can't imagine doing the same with the entry-level model, and since its specs are pretty much the same as the original Surface Go, I've got a decent sense of what you'd experience with the base Go 2. Basically, be prepared to max out its CPU with basic web browsing and a few apps. And you can forget about using it to manage any sort of media. Its 64GB of eMMC storage is incredibly slow and limited. Honestly, it's beyond basic. As a tablet, the Surface Go 2 felt just as nimble as before. It's easy to hold and great for web browsing and the occasional comic. But I'm astounded that Windows 10 is still pretty much a wasteland when it comes to high-quality tablet apps. It's 2020. Microsoft has had 2 years since the last Go, and many years watching the iPad grow into a formidable threat to PCs. So where are the tablet apps? While you could certainly use the Go 2 as a slate, you'll definitely spend more of your time with it in PC mode. Yet another reason why it should come with the damn keyboard. No matter how you're using the Surface Go 2, you can expect it to last a decent amount of time. It ran for 9 hours and 55 minutes during our battery benchmark, which involves looping in HD video. But while that's a respectable figure and it's comparable to the entry-level iPad, it's only 5 minutes longer than the last model. I definitely expected more of an improvement, especially since Microsoft is touting longer battery life as a key selling point. If you're considering the Surface Go 2, get the $630 model with the Core M3 processor, 8GB of RAM, and a 128GB SSD. That's a decent sweet spot of price and performance, and it'll also be noticeably faster than any Pentium Gold model. If you've got your heart set on LTE, be prepared to shell out $730 for that. Honestly, this is a case where I'd rather just tether with my phone when I'm out with this thing. As for competitors, there really aren't many. Most PC makers gave up on detachable notebooks years ago, which leaves Microsoft practically in a category of its own. The strongest alternatives are Apple's $329 iPad and $499 iPad Air. The cheaper models will still offer better tablet apps than the priciest Surface Go 2, and the iPad Air is a great option if you want more power but don't want to shell out for Apple's Pro tablets. Both iPads can also be equipped with keyboard cases like Logitech's Combo Touch, so you can still be pretty productive. Now, I really wanted to love the Surface Go 2, and with the right configuration, it can be a pretty useful tiny PC. But it's not the wondrous $400 tablet Microsoft claims. It's really a shame that the company didn't do much to improve that entry-level experience over the last few years, other than expanding the screen by half an inch. It's called the Go, after all. Microsoft should be doing more to push forward.